This is a year old. Over a year old. Oof. Uh-oh.
And you.
Like, they're actually making a, like, there's a video glorifying on the conservative, I don't know what the actual YouTube channel is, conservative official, 1,000 subs. Did Donald Trump really record lines for this video? He's played it at rallies. Wow, Lawson, thanks, buddy. Jesus Christ.
This is gonna be so bad. Well, get ready for Trump's Project 20.
Justice for All is a charity record by former United States President Donald Trump and the J6 Prison Choir, a choir of about 20 men in prison for their involvement in the January 6th United States Capitol attack. The profits from the song are dedicated to legal aid of people incarcerated for the attack. Music video premiered on Steve Bannon's podcast War Room. Shows footage of Trump performing patriotic acts during his presidency. Jesus. Okay, I keep seeing this shit pop up. We'll do this and then the video. I don't know how true any of this is. Ignore the docs of where the president lives. This is my second duty to warn letter regarding hacking of the 2024 presidential election. The first letter on November 7th was directed to the Commonwealth of Pennsylvania officials. Both warnings are made per DNI Clapper's 2015 directive to all agencies and contractors associated with intelligence, financial agency technologies to warn of suspicions of hacking. Professionally, I have worked as the CEO or CTO at 7 high-technology firms, including 2 of which specialized in hacking and counter-hacking operations. My clients have included numerous governments, DoD, DHS, Department of State, F100 Financials, and F500 Industrials. I'm a lifelong Republican who has long placed service and participatory democracy over party and government. I have twice been blah, 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 blah. You should reverse your concession, call for both a full investigation of criminal activity and demand hand recounts in all 7 swing states. In my professional view, there are multiple and extremely clear indications the presidential vote was willfully compromised. I wholly agree with the public letter of Duncan Well et al. Of November 13th, stating that they believe there is a possibility of hacking and calling for hand recounts. Identify ways to ensure the will of the voters. The most effective manner of doing so is through targeted recounts requested by the candidate. In the light of the breaches, we ask that you formally request hand recounts in at least the states of Michigan, Nevada, Wisconsin, and Pennsylvania. We have no evidence that the outcomes of the elections in those states were actually compromised as a result of the security breaches, and we are not suggesting they were, but binding risk-limiting audits or hand recounts should be routine for all elections, especially when the stakes are high and the results are close. We believe that, under the current circumstances, when massive software breaches are known and documented, recounts are necessary and appropriate to remove all potential doubt and set example security best practices in all elections. In 2020, records, video camera footage, and depository testimony produced in a civil case in Georgia disclosed that its voting system used statewide had been breached over multiple days by operatives hired by attorneys for Donald Trump. Do I want to... It says August 8th, 2017 is when the court case, I guess, was initially filed. Oh, I'm sorry. In 2022, records being produced in a civil case. Okay, this is when the case was initially filed. So I'm looking for records in 2022. Oh man, are they not going to say what it is? Which filing is this? Does this reference a particular filing, or is this just like the case number? This looks like it's just the case number, basically. 9AT. The evidence shows that the operatives made copies of the software that runs all of the equipment in Georgia and certain other states and shared it with other Trump allies and operatives. Can you post the case document link in chat? There you go. Application for admission of only approval by this order by not granting this application. Notice by collation. Motion to withdraw some bullshit. Order by docket. Stipulated order. Scheduling order. Certificate of service. Supplemental discovery responses. Notice of filing. Additional evidence in support of renewed motions for attorney's fees and expenses. This is 150 pages. Deposition. Oof, I don't have time to go through all of this. I wish people would link and source shit better. Subsequent court filings and public records requests revealed that the breaches in Georgia were part of a larger effort to take copies of voting system software from systems in Michigan, Pennsylvania, Colorado, and Arizona, and to share the software in the operatives network. According to testimony and declarations by some of the technicians who obtained copies of the software, they've had access for more than 3 years to the software for the central servers, tabulators, and highly restricted election databases of both election systems and software. Wait, is that true? Hold on. 10. Oh my God, 363 pages. What is this? Motion to quash indictment for insufficiency of evidence. SQL Management Studio version 17.1 was found on the EMS. What does EMS stand for again? Where are my software people at? Vote modification in Antrim County was consistent with technical manipulation of the election project file. This project file was generated and deployed by election source. Election source configured and deployed Antrim County's project files as a result of the modification. The modification demonstrates manipulation of all races on the ballot. Administrator access via administrator password permits modification to these project files and creates inaccurate vote tally results observed during the election in Antrim County. The SQL Management Studio version 31 was found to be installed on the Antrim County election management system. That's what it is. This software is not certified by the Election Assistance Commission for use on electronic voting systems. This software tool was utilized in expert testing to replicate the Antrim County November 3rd, 2020 election vote tally manipulation. Testing using this software tool was consistent with technical manipulation. Election source staff responsible for the creation and deployment of this project have direct access to make specific modifications to the project files. Testing indicates that vote modification can be pre-planned and deployed prior to an election. Election source staff possesses all the administrative access to make selective modification of the project files to manipulate the vote tally for any targeted county, precinct, or race. Is this saying that to replicate the Antrim County November 3rd, 2020 election vote tally manipulation, didn't they do hand recounts in Antrim and all of it matched up? Or I don't know if they're claiming that something happened here that I'm not aware of, or they utilize this software to find eligible voters who have not had cast ballots. It's complex, and I don't know if I believe it, but it seems to be a plausible way to add voters. Oh, interesting. Okay. So it was used, but it wasn't used for nefarious purposes. It was used. Okay. Man. Let's see. How far out of my league do I want to make comments? On an intuitive level where I don't know anything about anything at all relating to software development or deployment of any of these systems, I feel like it would be weird to give direct, have MySQL access tools or SQL database management tools for people. I feel like you would just build a front end for this to make adjustments. And then you'd rather mark the database rather than have direct access to the actual database to add or remove entries. That seems not good practice, but I could be totally fucking wrong there. Maybe that's actually super standard practice for managing these types of databases. I don't know. But here's said by one of the authors of the letter. They've been warning about this for years. The election source staff responsible for the creation and deployment of the project have direct access to make specific modifications to the project files. Testing indicates that vote modification should be pre-planned and deployed prior to the election. Sure. Front end takes development time. Any updates also take required front end updates. Lots of people learn SQL instead. Sure, but I mean, I understand what you're saying. First of all, I don't actually, you know what? I don't know if I believe you. I'm sure there are a billion fucking open source solutions or proprietary solutions that allow you to interface with a SQL database there must be. I can't believe you. I cannot believe you that somebody's like, hey, how do I interface with my SQL database? It's whoa, you need a front end for the database? Oh shit, we're fucked. Oh God, we have to build a whole new thing. There's no shot. There have to be a billion solutions for this. I don't believe you. There's no shot. There's no shot. But who knows? Maybe I'm wrong. Maybe I'm retarded. Logs in the EMS indicate election source technicians responsible for deploying the project files in Antrim County also had access to numerous other county project files to include unclear if modifications about counties impacted this project files. SQL Management Studio version 17.1 was found on the EMS, and the software is not certified by the Election Assistance Commission for use on electronic voting systems. The SQL tool is a utility that enables the modification of project files to databases on the EMS. Like, what? Like, that seems like that probably shouldn't be there, right? But maybe, I don't know, maybe people put all sorts of weird software on shit. Testing shows the replication of the Antrim County election vote manipulation as asserted by Alderman. If it was true, what would you do? Or what could you do? So, like, oh boy. Here we go. Time to get triggered. When you talk about like back end and front end, sometimes people say back end is kind of like your settings. So like, oh, on Reddit, like what can you change on the back end? Like your settings. And then your front end is like the things that like are displayed to other people or whatever. It's not actually true. Everything you have access to as a consumer is front end, right? I think back end, I'm sure there are more specific definitions for this, but like backend refers to like, I don't want to say raw data, but we can say like databases, like stuff that's stored in tables that's not easy to work with, not easy to look at, not easy to at a glance understand what's going on. And front end it's like a front end is a way to interface with stuff on the back end, basically, right? So technically, even when you go into your Reddit settings and you're changing like, or your Destiny GG settings, when you change stuff, that's still the front end. You're not changing but you're using it to interface with stuff in the database, right? This is your back end. If you have a database, so database is very boring. SQL, I don't know if it's the most popular one, but I'm pretty sure it's a super popular database. You can store rows and columns of information. My guess is going to be that best practice when it comes to dealing with databases is you have your backend database and your front end is going to be some software that basically allows you to interface with this database in a way that's not going to destroy everything on your fucking website, right? So for instance, if I want to delete somebody from this database, I want to destroy them as a customer, okay? Maybe I have on my front end, I have a thing called delete, okay? And I'm like, oh, cool, I can delete an account, all right? When you delete the account, what's probably happening is the delete function is probably, there might be, maybe in a SQL database, maybe you've created an extra column for, is this a deleted or inactive account? Or maybe you have like a special notation or marking on accounts that can't be logged into anymore. There could be a whole bunch of ways you deal with them. When you delete an account using your front end application, what's actually happening on the database side is that account is maybe being marked as inactive or it's being moved to a different area. Something like that is happening, right? And there's a variety of reasons why you might want to do this. One is because if something gets fucked up, you want to be able to undo it. Two is because maybe you want to store information or process deleted accounts in a different way. We can imagine a scenario where if I delete 100 accounts, I don't want people to remake the same account over and over and over again. So maybe a deleted account is actually sent to some other place where the email or some other information is retained in a way that's GDPR compliant, right? There's a ton of different ways that you want to like deal with data, basically. And front-end users are retards, so you never want to rely on them to do the right things. So you have a database here, you build a front-end application for them, and the front end is translating their requests into manipulation of the database that like makes sense, right? Now, my understanding is that when you're talking about tools like this, SQL Management Studio version 17.1, this SQL Management Studio, that sounds like a program that is not a front-end application that allows you to do things. It sounds like a GUI, a graphical user interface that allows you to input raw database commands. And we might be able to envision a whole bunch of reasons why that would be really bad. Like maybe somebody's like, oh, I want to be able to add a column because I want to be able to know if my voters are black or white. And maybe you add a column, but the way that you add it, maybe you aren't, you're not dealing with your inputs correctly, and you're leaving yourself open to a whole bunch of vulnerabilities, or there's not like a good front end interface way to access like these new rows or columns that you've created, or maybe as you create or destroy things, you're fucking with other it seems like from an undertone, right? It seems like there'd be a whole bunch of reasons why you wouldn't really want somebody to be able to just modify your database itself, because it's a more technical thing, and there's a whole bunch of potentially dependencies on this. From one software from a software application maybe thing we're thinking about. However, potentially a more scary thing is when you're talking about like access control or you're talking about like who can do what, right? If I have a database and I've got like 2 network administrators with permissions to access it, and then I build a front-end application where the permissions are all set up correctly, and what it can do is like obviously restrained or limited. If anything goes wrong with or is fucked with that database, there's 2 people that are responsible. There's only 2 people that have access to the raw database. Everything else is going to be managed by this front-end application. There's probably going to be logs. It can only do so many things, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. But the issue is that if you have tools that give you access to the database itself, you theoretically could do really bad things. I mentioned breaking databases, but maybe what you could do is maybe you could go in and change like you could change information that's actually stored in the individual columns, right? And that might be really bad. Maybe you could actually go in and change and say, hey, I want to change who this guy voted for, right? You probably never want somebody to be able to make that change in a database, or if they can, you want there to be like a highly restricted permission, right? So these are, that's like one of a lot of things that might be like really bad, that might be really bad that somebody could do. So now again, I don't know, I could be whatever. I don't know what the standard software development or deployment environments look like for SQL databases, or even if SQL databases are super commonly used anymore. But I would be surprised if it was common practice in a responsible environment where permissions are doled out in a responsible manner, that any like ordinary user is ever given the ability to have direct access using a tool to an actual SQL database, and it wasn't through some kind of application or GUI for some front end that's using like API to communicate back. That would be my assumption, because having raw access to the database could lead to a lot of really bad things. Hold on. I don't know why you're doing this. So some people are talking about SQL injections or SQL injections. We're not talking about SQL injections here. We're talking about, because my understanding is that a SQL injection, maybe there's a way in like the front end application, maybe there's a way that I can type something or do something in a way that allows me to interface with the database in a way that I'm not supposed to be able to. Maybe, for instance, maybe I can enter or type in a name. Maybe I can type in a name on who I want to search up and delete. But if I type enough, maybe it's only a 32-character field, but I can type past that. And when I type past that, there's an overflow that is actually executed as raw code in the database itself, right? That would be like I think that's called a buffer overflow attack. I think that would qualify as like a SQL injection. This here is not an injection attack if you have raw access. It's just access to the database. None of this is like injection or hacking or vulnerabilities. It's just, you're just given raw access. You don't need to do any hacking or crazy type stuff. That's the issue. There is nothing about this would be like, injection or horrible things like that. It would be, That means no authentication on the database. No? I mean, my guess is going to be that you can probably still have authentications on software like that. But the thing is, I just don't know why you probably just never, ever, ever want to give users access to a database. It's probably just a bad idea. Like, why? Like, make a nice front end, because they're going to do retarded shit with it. Okay? If you give a database to a retard, okay, he's going to find a way to literally cause Skynet to exist because of the most retarded manipulation you've ever seen in your entire life of data. It's just never good. From the limited understanding I have, okay? You want to build them a very simple thing that says like, hey, if you want to delete an account, push this button. Don't go into why do I have 400 rows of people with the names missing? Why is that happening right now? Oh, well, I wanted to delete the users, so I went in and I just deleted the names in all the rows. That, like that, you're gonna run into like a whole bunch of retarded shit. Or like, hey, why are there 50 million errors that are popping out here when this person's trying to log in? Oh, I don't know, what happened? oh, they wanted to change their name. So I went into the database and I just changed the entry here on this particular. It's like, well, you can't just, what if there's there's like a million reasons why this, that's what I'm saying. You probably wouldn't want to give database access ever to an ordinary user. And I don't know if you would use, like, SQL Management Studio sounds like a program that, like, you would have people that are working with the database using, not users that need to interface with it via something more appropriate like an API. Would that be my guess? What do you want?
Hey, I wanted to talk about women.
Okay, wait, can you give me like 20 minutes and we can?
Yeah.
Okay, also, when you come back, figure out how to boost your mic, motherfucker, okay?
Okay, bye-bye.
Bye. SQL Management Studio is just a GUI for admins. You still need to authenticate yourself to do anything. No, hold on. SQL Management Studio might be a GUI for admins, but it's a GUI for backend access, right? I think that's the issue. It's not just a GUI like a front-end application that's utilizing an API to access the database. I think that it's a GUI for back-end access to the database itself, which, again, I don't think you want. I don't think you ever want users to have access to that. Yes, but you can give read-only perms on tables. Stop! Yes, I'm sure there's a million ways to do bad practice. I'm sure you could do that. I'm sure you could give everybody like raw database access and just create different Windows logins that give you different access. Like, no, yes, I'm sure there are probably ways to do it, sure, but I doubt that it's ordinary practice to give users access to the raw SQL database when you just build front-end applications that you don't have to, that probably have a whole litany of tools that make it so much easier to manage all these permissions and everything, okay? Okay. Okay. Because it sounds like, for at least for what they're claiming here, it sounds like this access for this file, this access for these project files allow them to change basically whatever they want in the database. Is what it sounds like from the 3 pages that I read on this. So I'm pretty sure it's actually decently common practice to have certain level devs locked from certain backend perms. We're not talking about devs. We're talking about users, not devs. Everybody that interfaces with a database is not a developer. There are users that need to get information from the database in a way where they don't fuck it all up. Stop. Okay. Not this, but maybe, just to hedge, maybe people do use SQL Management Studio. Maybe that is given to users sometimes, okay? All right. The SQL blah, 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 blah. Testing shows the replication of this on searching for modifying the vote totals on the EMS by utilizing the SQL tool resident on the EMS. The SQL tool requires no special access beyond being able to log into the EMS itself. Nice. Ooh, no password, no permissions at all. Therefore, any actor with access to the EMS could create the manipulation of the election results. Oh, based. So it was literally just a tool with no login, password protection, I'm guessing, that allowed you to modify literally any part of the database that you wanted. Okay, based. So if they changed certain files on election day, they could potentially change the vote without anyone noticing. Is that the claim? Yes, that's the claim. That's what is being stated here. However, because every single vote produces a paper ballot, you can do a hand recount to see if any type of manipulation like this has taken place. And that's apparently what they're advocating for, okay? These counties appeared in the user info log file on the EMS as being previously open projects that were being utilized by the election source technician during the same time frame. To certain that the election source technician had access to project files for more than just Antrim County. It is unclear whether the configuration of the other counties had an impact on the Antrim County election. This is in regards to the 2020 election. This would be their concern here, I guess, was for the 2024 election. I guess. You're talking about users or devs accessing the database. In this context, who is a user? In this context, the user would be election officials, not software developers that are developing the software for the election officials to use. I'm guessing, are these pictures of that piece of software? Is this what's it called? I don't fucking know any of these things. SQL Management Studio version 17.1. Is that what this is? Is that what these are pictures of? No. People are saying no. Okay. I don't know what these are pictures of then. I don't know what this is coming from. Don't know, don't care. I think they enter those ballots and they show pictures of the EMS results. Oh, okay. Oh. So this is the EMS, the election management stuff. Gotcha. Okay. This is a 363 page. I don't have time to go through all this, but. And I don't even know if I'm accessing the right thing they're referencing. So I'll just continue to read this. In 2022, records, video camera footage, and deposition testimony produced in a civil case in Georgia disclosed that its voting system used statewide had been breached over multiple days by operatives hired by attorneys for Donald Trump. The evidence showed that the operatives made copies of the software that runs all of the equipment in Georgia and certain other states and shared it with other Trump allies and operatives. Subsequent court filings and public records requests revealed that the breaches in Georgia were part of a larger effort to take copies of voting system software from systems in these states. Both election system software and Dominion voting system, the two largest voting system vendors, constituting the most severe election security breach publicly known. According to okay. Combined, their equipment counts nearly 70% of all votes nationwide. 96% of Arizona voters use Dominion and ES and S equipment. 100% of Georgia voters vote on Dominion machines. 98% of Nevada votes on Dominion voting machines, and the remainder uses ES and S. Okay. Possessing copies of the voting system software enables bad actors to install it on electronic devices and to create their own working replicas of the voting systems, probe them, and develop exploits. Skilled adversaries can decompile the software to get a version of the source code, study it for vulnerabilities, and could even develop malware designed to be installed with minimal physical access to the voting equipment by unskilled accomplices to manipulate the vote counts. Attacks can also be launched by compromising the vendors responsible for programming systems before elections, enabling large-scale distribution of malware. In December 2022 and again in 2023, many of us concerned by the security risks posed by these breaches wrote to the Attorney General, FBI Director, Cybersecurity Director outlining the security concerns and urging an investigation. Though they have been limited, localized investigations, there's no evidence of a federal investigation to determine what was done with the most misappropriated voting software. Other relevant parties have pointed to the serious risks posed by the misappropriation of the voting software before it was known that partisan operatives had taken the software. This is kind of the big claim. I'm too lazy. I need to see the reality is that if this was true, the U.S. government would be complicit. Well, no. What they're talking about here, if true, could theoretically be a trivial attack on election-related stuff, but this would be defeated very easily by a hand recount. Easily by a hand recount. But it also relies on them having gotten copies of the software beforehand, which would be troubling, and it relies on some software being installed on these computers, which shouldn't be, in my opinion, it seems like it shouldn't be. Dominion voting systems objected vehemently to providing a software to the same partisan actors who ultimately got copies through voting system breaches. I need to know more about this, stating that to give its software to biased actors would cause irreparable damage to the election security interests of the country. Before the breaches in Georgia have been confirmed, the Georgia Secretary of State's chief information officer testified that having copies of the software provide a roadmap to the ways that the system could be accessed. The Georgia Attorney General opposed. Bro, that was a good meme. Do you think he was joking? Fuck, my bad. I want to ban him. Notably, U.S. elections are potentially resilient because there are paper ballots recording the voters' intent in most states, meaning that even if the voting system is at risk, the will of voters can be determined reliably by recounting the paper ballots by hand, although we are aware that not all paper ballots are verified by the voter, and not all states take adequate to protect the ballot chain of custody. Wait, hold on. Okay. Don't care. Audits will be conducted in some of the most scrutinized states, but in key states, they will not be conducted in a timely way that could reveal any concerns with the vote count. In addition, in most states, the audits are insufficiently rigorous to ensure any potential errors in tabulation will be quantum corrected, and they cannot be considered a safeguard against, especially Georgia's audits are non-binding, and Michigan, impossible. Among swing states, only Arizona's audit laws assure that if enough discrepancies are identified, the audit hand count will be expanded to correct a potential incorrect results. The facts of voting system breaches are not disputed. It is well documented there were severe multiple voting system breaches before the 2024 election. To ensure the voters can have confidence, the breaches, security not take the results of the election from pursuing hand recounts, and at minimum, these are sprayed. Okay. What is the is there a YouTube video I can watch on this idea that, just give me a video, that the copies of this software were actually obtained by, because I think this is, what did Tina Peters give out exactly? Good one. In the months following the 2020 election, she allowed an unauthorized person to access to the Mesa County's Dominion electronic voting machines and to copy the hard drives of those machines. Oh, this was, okay. I didn't know if it was just voter information. Okay, so she actually did give access to that software, and that was part of what she was convicted of. Do we know who she gave access to? Did we ever find that out? Do we know who got that? Wait, who did Tina Peters give access to? Jurors found Peters guilty in August for allowing a man to misuse a security card to access to the Mesa County election system and for being deceptive about the person's identity. The man was identified with MyPillow chief executive Mike Lindell, or affiliated with. Oof. Okay. That's pretty insane. Do we know the individual exactly, like, who it was? The man was affiliated with. Does that mean we know who this person was? Ron Watkins question mark? Why are you putting a question mark? Is that it or no? What? I'm a retard. What does all this mean? Okay. I just read 5 pages on this, so who the fuck knows, okay? But this is what, and to their credit, okay, because we are better than the conservatives, to their credit, what's being alleged is that it seems that a pathway has been made for voter fraud or for election fraud to happen, but they're not saying that it has happened and that there's any evidence of it happening, or I'd rather that there's any evidence for the outcomes of being changed, but just that there's a pathway that's been opened that's insecure, and perhaps a hand recount, would make sure that nothing weird happened. Because right in the beginning, they say we have no evidence that the outcomes of the elections in those states were actually compromised as a result of the security breaches, and we are not suggesting that they were. So it sounds like what they're alleging has happened is so how do we say this? You have a hard drive, okay? And what happens is an image was taken of this drive, so you get a copy of all the data, and a copy of that data includes the Dominion voting system software, okay? Well, if you have a copy of this software, okay, I know that I think it's possible to decompile or reverse compile some things so that you can see the source code or whatever. Given access to a piece of software like this, it's possible that being able to look through the source code or being able to reverse engineer the source code, it's possible that given enough time, given enough people, given enough effort, you could figure out a way to attack, to launch attacks against this software. Meaning you can find a way to get the software to behave in a way that's not intended, right? To produce a result or an outcome that wasn't intended by the designers of the software. So this is probably not good. The fact that this software was even accessed illegitimately and then passed off illegitimately to people to analyze means that they could theoretically find ways to attack this software. Now, something that is there should theoretically be multiple safeguards against something like this. Like even if you found a way to attack the software, you shouldn't necessarily be given access to a machine running the software. You shouldn't be given access, physical or internet or otherwise. Like there's ways to, even if that were to happen, it shouldn't be the end of the world. But the other part of this is that would be scary. The other irritating thing is that it seems like Dominion voting systems and the electronic systems and whatever, the ESCNS, these things produce files. These things produce project files, okay, or they utilize project files that are essentially databases, okay, which is fine. That's not a problem in and of itself, okay. However, it seems to be the case that on a lot of the election computers that run election stuff, the election computers have software that allows you to have direct access to these databases that are being produced by Dominion voting systems or other types of election software, right? So, given all of that information, right, if I'm able to get a perfect copy of the software that I know is going to be running the elections on the machines, and I know that the machines that are ultimately getting the project files that these voting machines are producing, if I know that these machines have software that allow them to access the databases of the project files that are being created, given enough time, I should be able to cook up a way to pretty easily change this database in a way that's favorable to me, theoretically, right? And so the concern is because this has happened and because this is the case, that that software exists, that this software was copied, or that this access exists and that this software is copied, that there could have been some impropriety that happened with some of these things. So what they say is to check this, we should just do a hand recount in some of the states or maybe even in just some of the counties and make sure that the hand recount matches what the electronic voting tabulation says it is. And then if you do a few of those and they're fine, then you know that like nothing weird happened, basically. At Destiny, probably not, because you'd still need to authenticate to the database using a non-human ID. It sounds like what you're saying is just not true. It sounds like they got copies or they got access to these machines as part of their investigations, like these people, and they found that as long as you had a login to the EMS, you had full access to the SQL database. That's what these people said. Somebody asked if this is related to the Fox and Friends stuff. No. The Fox Dominion stuff alleged impropriety and collusion with Dominion voting systems itself and like other parties. Even though this is about even though this is about the, even though this involves like Dominion voting systems and the ESES, whatever that is, these things, they're not alleging impropriety from Dominion. In fact, they're quoting Dominion when Dominion says nobody, no partisan actors should ever have access to our software. That should never happen, but it did happen. Oh, this. Dominion Voting Systems objected vehemently to providing its software to the same partisan actors who ultimately got copies through voting system breaches, stating that to give its software to biased actors would cause irreparable damage to the election security interests of the country. So Dominion wouldn't have wanted any of this to happen, yeah. Okay. How many people would need to collaborate to pull something like this off? So the issue is that, like, if I'm understanding all of this, right, the problem is that if all of this is as is being said, and if their tests and everything worked correctly, theoretically, an attack like this could be pulled off with 0 people. So theoretically, it could be that you could have an outside actor who never interfaces with any of the machines ever himself whatsoever, could create a batch file, an executable, some way of where you load a file onto a drive that like loads itself onto a computer. If somebody plugs in a USB drive, or if somebody opens an email or whatever, and that thing could like make alterations to using that other program. Like theoretically, once you have this level of access, you can do stuff like this that people wouldn't even be aware is happening. I think is probably the worst part about stuff like this. You wouldn't have to have anybody involved directly that would even know this is happening. Like, it could just be people that are doing their best to make sure everything is, that's I think that's probably the issue with this thing. But the way that you would deal with this would be by doing a hand recount to make sure that the vote tabulations match the machine tabulations, or that the hand recount would match the machines, basically. Do you think a recount will happen? I don't have time to go through all of this, and I don't know if like all of what's being alleged here is true. If it is, then I think it would be good to do a recount, probably in just like a few of these counties at least. But I don't know. Like, I don't know about this. I think that 2 things that make me intuitively lend a lot of credence to what they're saying here is that, 1, they are hedging very responsibly, which I appreciate, right? They're not saying that election fraud happened or voter fraud happened. They're not saying that any of the outcomes were changed. They don't have evidence of it. They don't even, they're not sure. They just want to recount just to make sure. They're not even suggesting that they were. They just want to recount just to make sure. That's the first thing. And the second thing is, supposedly, now this is dated 3 days ago, but supposedly they've been alerting firing the klaxons or ringing the warning bells on this for years before any of the election stuff even happened. Supposedly they've been saying for a few years, like, hey, hold on, like somebody needs to check this. So it's not like as the election results come in, right, where the Republicans like, oh, this is being rigged and that's being rigged because we lost those ones or whatever. They're saying like, hey, like they've been saying, oh, in December 2022 and again in 2023, many of us concerned by the security risk posed by these breaches, and these breaches happened years ago, right? And we know these breaches did happen, I guess, because at the very least, like the Tina Peters one she was convicted on. And my guess would be probably not, but the other ones, I just haven't read all the stories on that. But can you explain why a hand recount would change anything? Because if I have a way to access a database and change the voting totals on that database, I'm not changing the ballots that are printed out when you actually do a vote and it's changed in the database. So when it's in the database. So when you go to hand recount and you see that like, oh wait, the vote was 100 to 30, not 130 to 0 or something, right? Well, my database, my electronic file, this is saying that the voting total is one way, but when we did a hand recount of what's produced after you vote, the paper ballots that are made after, this is saying that there's a huge discrepancy. That would be the issue, right? This is why when the Democrats did hand recounts in 2020, and the hand recounts were the same as the Dominion voting system and everything else, it defeated the claim that the Dominion voting system was rigging things because they print paper ballot trails afterwards, right? Yeah. Does the voter get to see the printed ballot? I don't know if I've ever voted on a machine that uses stuff like this, so I'm not sure. I don't know. Somebody can tell me about it. Isn't it a bit unrealistic to only accept voting machine tallies from machines with 0 vulnerabilities, including 0 days? Nobody here is talking about that. Anything could theoretically have a vulnerability. You just don't want people having access to software that they shouldn't have access to with an unlimited amount of time to probe for vulnerabilities, and then give them access to like physical access to systems that don't have good permissions set up, basically. Yeah. Yeah, I feel like the biggest thing for this that I wouldn't that makes me think this is probably not a thing is that, like, we saw, for instance, like Miami, the swing in some of the non-swing states was like pretty dramatic, or not what people expected it to be. So it would be weird if like all of the swing states followed what we were seeing in the non-swing states in terms of like, oof, this is going to be probably rough, right? So what percentage of machines are vulnerable to this exploit? Well, I mean, you don't even know if there are I mean, for this attack that's being theorized, every single election machine in these counties would be vulnerable. That's the claim that they were making, because when they did their tests, they were able to go back and look through logs, and they were to see who had access to which county's machines. Fuck, I don't have it open anymore. But they were saying like, oh, we can see that this machine has accessed the project files of like 12 different counties, so they can see that, right? What would it take to make a recount happen? Maybe asking. I think the candidate can request it, and then I don't know what happens after that. Like how you grant it or not. Many states for audits, like you described by law. Okay. This is one of the experts. They exploit hinges on the idea of a bullet ballot. What the fuck is spoutable? Another Twitter? Bullet ballots have one vote in one race, no other votes in the election. Such voters exist, but I've ever seen them. Ooh, typo. 0.1% until now. 2024, Nevada, Arizona, Trump, BB voters could fill Yankee Stadium 3 times. Neighbor states don't have enough to fill a big high school gym. Why not use numbers here? Just this first paragraph or sentence alone makes me not trust anything this guy says, but incorrect. This isn't one of the co-signers of that letter, but he is the one with the Substack post. Oh. There are now approximately 123,000 ballots which voted Trump and nothing else. Jesus. Wait, is that true? Can somebody show me that? Wait, how many people voted in Arizona? Arizona election result 2024. He got 1.75 million votes. Over 100,000 of these were bullet ballots? How do we know that for sure? Is that linked anywhere? Hold on, what are these guys talking about? Agree, but I would like to point out that usually in software production, security configuration is usually done really bad with open RC ports and default admin credentials. This may not happen here, but a lot of chat tries to convince Destiny this is common and accepted way to do it. Okay, just to reiterate for the trillionth time, I have absolutely no formal background in software development or any of that, okay? But it feels like to me, just from the consumer side, that 20 years ago, you could literally hack shit by just trying to test as many like user interfaces as possible with like username admin, username password. I feel like that's largely like completely disappeared, at least on the consumer side of almost everything. Everything has a default password. Everything has a default code key, whatever that you need to download, like almost everything. Now, maybe on the enterprise side of things, maybe that's not the case. Maybe in the enterprise side of things, default configs are still really dog shit and implementation is really dog shit. Maybe that's possible. But Ludwig made a video about the Twitch apocalypse and is refusing to name Hassan. Nice.